Hey guys, what's up? My name is Anthony, and welcome to another edition of BnA Sports Talk. So today I'm gonna have my power rankings for the post-draft era of the NFL in 2019. I don't know how else to phrase it, but yeah, here are my power rankings. If you want to look at them, good. But I'm gonna focus on the top 14 because these are the teams that I think obviously the top 14 teams. And besides the Browns, as you'll see, I think all these teams can make the Super Bowl. I'll explain why they can make the Super Bowl and why they're in this position and their weaknesses, what the main story for this team is, what they have to overcome, and what their strengths, weakness. You guys get the point. And if you want to see me do another video on the bottom half of the league, maybe I was thinking about doing like a way too early mock draft. Obviously, I don't know a lot of things, but I'm basically just gonna predict who's gonna be at the bottom of the league next year, and we'll see like just a top 10 mock draft, and we'll go back to this in a year and just be like, oh god, we were so far off. But I think that'd be fun. It's always fun doing that, but it can't be all your content because you really don't have any idea and it's not really relevant. But okay, so let's get started. Number 14, I have the Jaguars. So the Jaguars, the main question with them is their defensive front. You have two guys off the edge that are, talented. You got Josh Allen as a linebacker, which I think that you actually stole in the draft. And plus, you fixed up your kind of porous offensive line by selecting Jawan Taylor. If he can continue to stay healthy, I think you're good. Another main concern with this team, I think, is running back and wide receiver. Leonard Fournette hasn't, even when he has been healthy, he hasn't really been as bright of a spot as this team hoped to. You picked Josh Allen in replace of T.J. Hawkinson, so you made that trade-off. But other than that, your team is looking pretty good, especially on the offensive line. Defensive line, Abry Jones and Marcellus Darius are going to be kind of, I don't know, they're going to be liabilities on the defensive front. But let's just move on to the next team because I think that's the Atlanta Falcons. I picked them to make it to the Super Bowl last year. And I think that they have a pretty good shot this year. They didn't really lose anybody. The defense is a little bit older. They did suffer some injuries. You still have all the offensive talent. You brought in two new offensive linemen in the offseason, through the draft. Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry, a guard and tackle that should help Matt Ryan out on the right side. Not really that important, but, important nonetheless. Matt Ryan has a big contract. They need to protect him. They still have a lot of weapons for them. Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Calvin Ridley. You guys know all those players. But the defensive line, I thought they'd add and help Vic Beasley and Jared out on that line, especially when they doubled down and paid him. I was like, okay, they're going to help him out. But the main story of this team, I think, is their, whether their defensive backs can be a Super Bowl defense, can develop and make a Super Bowl defense. Mohamed Sanu, Ricardo Allen, Isaiah Oliver. These guys are going to need to step up this year because they were young a couple years ago, but they're not exactly spring chickens anymore. So next, I want to talk about the Browns because the Browns really had an interesting offseason. The main question I have with this team is their coaching. Not really anything else besides coaching. I mean, they did get rid of Jabril Peppers, Kevin Zeitler. They got Olivier Vernon, though. Not a little bit of a turnover in the offseason, but not much. You did get Greedy Williams, and I forget what other player they got on. Sheldon Richardson. They got Sheldon Richardson, which I think is going to be an amazing acquisition on the line. Their defensive line is going to be pretty legit in their 4-3 scheme. I think this is going to be perfect. Antonio Callaway is returning. He should be good on special teams. Your secondary is what I'm worried about because it's kind of young. You have Denzel Ward. You have T.J. Carey, he's 30. But, this secondary is going to be kind of rough for them since they did get rid of Jabril Peppers. But you did add, like I said, Greedy Williams. He's all over the place. He's really fast. Greedy Williams, I think, was a good addition for this team. Next, we have the Steelers. I still think the Steelers are ahead of the Browns. And let me tell you why. Coaching and locker room. I think when things go wrong, they're going to go really wrong for this team. I really don't think that the Browns are going to be able to withstand the loss to Tennessee. All of a sudden, it's just like, oh God. Even if they do win against Tennessee, maybe they get too confident and then they end up losing their next 3 games because the beginning of their schedule is kind of hard. As far as the Steelers, They have the wide receiver depth. They traded a third and a fifth for Antonio Brown. One of them, they got a wide receiver. I forget his name, but they definitely are strong in the as far as wide receivers go. You have Vance McDonald at tight end. Offensive line is always really good, so you never have to worry about that. That's really important. I don't think you should have paid Ben Roethlisberger, But yeah, you have on the defensive line Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. I think these guys are going to be good enough, and you improve your linebacking core with T.J. Watt and Devin Bush. I think this is really going to help this team moving forward. So yeah, I think the Steelers are 11. They're not quite the top 10 because I think number 10 would have to go to the Saints. The Saints, their secondary is a little bit weakness. You had a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, which I think was a complete steal. When they hopped the Giants, I was so mad because I really wanted Chauncey to become a Giant because he really didn't improve from junior year to senior year. I watched him when he played junior year, and every single time he got burned. But senior year, he really made a lot of leaps and bounds, especially like in coverage. But yeah, so the Saints, Eli Apple, Marshawn Lattimore, not great, but I think it's doable. The main question I have with this team is Drew Brees and who's he going to throw to? Kind of like Patriots, but Tom Brady, he has a guy that he can rely on. I don't think that Drew Brees has a guy that he can rely on, especially now. I'm looking at Michael Thomas, not really. I'm not sure if he can just throw to Michael Thomas the whole time. They even tried to bring in Des Bryant last year when they started struggling, and that didn't really work out. I think they also brought in the guy, Brandon Marshall. I'm not sure if they did, but I think they also did bring in him, and it didn't really work. So yeah, that's the main question I have about the Saints. I still think that they can win the Super Bowl as long as they have the coach. Next, I have the Cowboys. Now, this team, I think, is a 1-2 year window. You have to choose who you're going to pay or not, and that's really going to be difficult for the Cowboys. If Dak Prescott gets paid any more than like $25 million, I don't think this team, especially this year, I don't think this team is going to be successful. I think they could be successful this year because it's like, okay, one last ride with this core. You have to pay Jalen Smith. They already paid DeMarcus Lawrence. You have to choose your priorities. Ezekiel Elliott, who you're going to pay. But I still think this team has a history of winning. Has a history of winning when there's chaos in the locker room too. So it's not like but like when expectations are high with this team, things usually do go wrong. So that's another main concern I have for this team. But yeah, I still think that they could win the division and be the first repeating division champs, even though I'm kind of skeptical of that. So the Rams are next. The main question I have with this team is their linebackers and whether Todd Gurley can stay healthy or not. Todd Gurley is a major question, and they added a running back in the draft. But it's running backs are usually good first year, I guess. They're kind of fresh legs and things like that. But Todd Gurley is going to be able to stay healthy. Jared Goff needs a solid run game in order to be successful. And they're repeat NFC champs. That's why I have them. I don't have them all the way behind the Saints, but it's a major question for this team. We'll see whether Sean McVay can come on strong his third year now, and whether Jared Goff is actually an elite quarterback or not. That's the major test for this team this year. So next, I would say has to go to the Chiefs. The Chiefs, coming into the season, they were actually, I think, my number one power ranking, but they have locker room problems. Patrick Mahomes is on the cover of Madden. You guys all know the Madden curse. I think the Frank Clark trade, I don't think they should have done that because they got desperate at a position. I say the main thing you never want to do is get desperate at a position. Justin Houston's on the Colts now. D Ford is on the, I think he went to the 49ers, but you did get a pick back for him, which you traded for Frank Clark. Like, this whole Chiefs thing, I think you have the coach, you have the quarterback, they're going to be fine. They've drafted Tyreek Hill's replacement, Kareem Hunt. That's going to be another question, but I think the running back that they have now should do enough. I'm not sure if it's Charkandrick West anymore. I forget who their running back is, but I think Patrick Mahomes, as long as he can make plays, he's fine. Just give him a solid offensive line, make the defense a little bit formidable, make them able to have a third down stop, and I think you should be fine. Next, we have the Packers. Now, this team is surging on my board. They remind me a lot of the 2016 Giants, who made the playoffs, even though they were really bad for the previous years. I think this is going to work for 1 or 2 years before the locker room really gets out of hand. And I think it's going to work this year. Aaron Rodgers, he's not really going to learn the system, quote-unquote. He's just going to go out there and try to make plays. They got Randall Cobb isn't there anymore, so their wide receiver core is pretty depleted. And plus, they got rid of Montgomery after he made that big mistake last year in the Rams game. The Rams game. So don't really have a running back. Don't really have a lot of weapons. But I think Aaron Rodgers will be able to make do. And you have a championship defense. So if Aaron Rodgers can get some chemistry with the players he has now, doesn't have Jordy Nelson anymore. But I think he can figure something out and it'll be successful. Next, I have the Bears. The Bears should still be respected, even though Mitch Trubisky in the last 5 games was four touchdowns, 3 interceptions or something. It wasn't great. People seem to figure out Matt Nagy's system, but in the draft they actually stole some wide receivers and running backs. They got really good value at the spots that they picked up those players. Jordan Howard is gone, but you have a nice replacement coming in. As far as defense, they picked up Clinton Dix to replace Adrian Amos. They replaced Adrian Amos with Clinton Dix, which I don't think is that bad. I think you still need a little bit more pressure on the defensive front. Those pieces are developing with Khalil Mack, Tariq Cohen on the offense. And I think if this team can get on a roll, their schedule is a little tougher than last year. But if they can get on a roll, they can be like the Rams of last year. So that's why I still have to respect them and put them all the way up here. Next, at 4, I have actually, believe it or not, I have the Eagles all the way up here. Carson Wentz hasn't proven to do it in the playoffs because he hasn't played a playoff game yet. We haven't seen him. He knows what the atmosphere is like now. He knows a lot of pressure's on him. He knows he has to take control of this franchise. He has some leadership problems, but I'm looking at all the offensive weapons they added to help out Carson Wentz, so he has more options except Zach Ertz. He doesn't rely on Zach Ertz too much. You have a solid offensive line just in case Jason Peters was a shell of himself. You can fill in Andre Dillard there right away. You got Jordan Howard, a solid running back in the backfield. He isn't great. He's been regressing over the past couple years, but I think he's good enough. Defensive line's still good. Main question with this team is their secondary, but they're proven last year to have a good enough secondary that it's formidable, and towards the end of the year they can make some plays, they can make some stops. I mean, they only let up 20 points to the Saints, which they weren't playing that good, but you still get the point. Number 3, I have the Patriots. They have a lot of young players, which this is why they dropped from 1 or 2. Usually Tom Brady doesn't really play well with a lot of young players. It's usually a lot of defensive leaders, and they don't really have a lot of that. Still have Gilmore, but you got rid of Trey Flowers, which I think was a big loss. But a lot of these draft picks from last year are coming back, like Isaiah Wynn. They're going to be playing this year. And Tom Brady, I think it's going to be a little hard for him to figure out in the beginning of the season. You're going to have a really tough September, but I think they're going to be surging on to the end of the year, and that's why I have them number 3. I think Tom Brady's going to take a while to figure things out this year. They're going to struggle real hard, and they're going to squeeze into the playoffs. Well, not squeeze into the playoffs. They're going to win the division still, but it's going to be a little harder than previous years. Number 2, I have the Colts. I have the Colts because they were smart this year in the draft. You have Paris Campbell, another target for Andrew Luck to throw to. Still have a great offensive line. And why not draft some more offensive guards just in case? Defense, they got Justin Houston in the offseason, made some smart locker room decisions rather than we have a lot of money, let's just spend it on all these guys Earl Thomas or some guys that might not fit into our defense. So I think the Colts were had lots of riches, but decided to spend smartly, which is smart. And I just don't think that they're better than the Chargers, who, even though they one of their top safeties just left, I think, to the Texans, Ajay. I forgot to pronounce his last name, but I think the Chargers are the team to beat. Phillip Rivers, this is going to be his last season, I think. Showed some signs of decline at the end of the season, kind of like Drew Brees did. But he still has Mike Williams as a target. Antonio Gates, I think, is still going to be playing. Offensive line is pretty strong. You have a combination of Derwin James now and Nasir Adderley out of Delaware. He was really, really smart, a really smart decision. You still have Joey Bosa, a really good defensive lineman. I think that this defense is a championship defense, and this offense, the only major question I have for this team is if their running backs can stay healthy and if Phillip Rivers can make those plays in the right moments and stay calm. And deliver them a championship. This team has all the right players. They should be ranked number 1, and they should have a target on their back. But the good thing is they didn't make it to the AFC Championship, so they're still flying a little bit under the radar. They should be a favorite in the AFC West. They should have a divisional round bye, and they should be playing home for the entire playoffs. And we'll see if Phillip Rivers can get it done. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your rankings, roughly a top 10. What teams you think are Super Bowl teams, where I was wrong, where I was right. In the comment section down below. Right down there, please comment, favorite, and subscribe if you haven't already. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.